Oh, words to live by, I tell you what.
Welcome, amigos. It's possible that many of you are probably, if you're in the United States of America, you're probably watching like the debate and stuff. I don't know. But we usually sit every time we do live shows at around 100,000 views, and today it's a little bit slow. So I'm just going to
Yeah. Oh,
clear, the deck.
that's right. That's on, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
yeah,
And actually,
I probably would be watching it, but I can't reach the remote, so, you know.
yeah. No, I caught a little bit and I was disgusted immediately.
I
I
don't
the and I'm getting you now, and I know this is not part of it, but I'm getting you. No, I always did, but I have to have contentions because if not, I can't clean out the drawers of
Mhm.
ideas if I don't bounce it off of people.
Mhm.
But I'm open to the. Here's what I was going to say. I'm understanding your position of a certain thing where it's a little bit, not hands offish, but like, well, you're saying I still have to cook food. I still have to go to that saying in the
Mhm.
context of, and then all this noise. I understand. Okay, so or at least that's a suggestion that I get from
Mhm.
what you say.
Yeah.
And there's a time frequency with that, a scale with that too.
Sure.
Um, you know, it's like there's never ending conflict. I understand that intellectually speaking, the first time you explained it, like in general in conversation,
Mhm.
but there's a difference between intellectually understanding something
Mhm.
and internalizing something.
Yeah.
And so in that, it's the journey.
Mhm.
I mean, you may take a little bit, I may take a little bit from you that's of value, but another part say, well, no, no, not that. And that other part that I say, no, no, not that, may still be of value, but for my purposes,
Mhm.
I'm still doing the little run across
Yeah.
the maze and I'm making decisions. Anyways, to conclude, I'm getting you in terms of, I'm gonna call it, not your words, mine, a slight sense of disgust and like, ugh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm starting to get that. I have had it before, but I'm here publicly recognizing that I understand that angle that you
Mhm.
expressed because it's the right thing to do to give the context. So yeah, so I saw a little bit and I was like, ugh,
Yeah.
ugh, ugh.
Mhm. Yeah. I don't want to watch the train wreck. I'll read about it in the paper tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, after everything's cleaned up and the trains are running again. I mean, I'll find out about it later on. I don't want to watch it. You know,
I get it, man.
I guess
And I'm
that's the
sure
best
there's
way to
others
put it.
like us.
Well, there's a few anyway. They're here. Welcome to the Trampled Underfoot podcast with
That's
your
right.
hosts Eloy Escojedo and me, Off Kilter.
You know what escajado means in Spanish?
No.
Okay, two things. One, I didn't know
Hmm.
until I started my journey with ancestry and all this
Hmm.
because it was never brought up. To me, it was just a last name and
Yeah.
okay. And two, it means a thorny brush that grows across the mountains of Cantabria.
Okay. Okay. A thorny brush that grows across the mountains of Cantabria.
Yeah, just wild. It's like a yellow flowered with thorns type thing. And it just grows on the side of the roads along the mountains, and it's just
Hmm.
wild.
And that's the
And
Escojedo.
yeah, so I've thought because
Now,
the origin of the home, um, as far as I can tell, is a place south of Santander
hmm.
in the mountains where I can actually trace my direct fathers.
Hmm.
But the town, I mean, I have the context of the town,
Hmm.
but that's only into the 1700s, crossing into the 1600s.
Hmm.
Where did it originate? Did somebody point out a thorn Or did somebody say, as one man's walking to go see like
Wait,
Eloy in 13 something or 14 or whatever, and as he's walking, there's a villager like gathering water, and then the guy stops and says, "Hey, where does Eloy live?" "Oh, Eloy lives by the Escajado." And then I'm assuming as just a thing. And anytime people would come by, "We're here to see Eloy." "Oh, Eloy is up by the Escajado." And then all of a sudden they call Eloy Escajado, and they just go to visit him or for whatever purpose. And the same thing is like by the river, just like in English, Mr. Wells
yeah.
or Cooper or Cooper not, but well, Cooper is one. Or what's the other one? Hammer or whatever, iron worker, and then they'll call him what do they call him? A
Oh,
smith.
yeah. Yeah. Miller. You had Weaver. Yeah. All kinds of different.
Yeah. So in
Um,
my case, I'm
it's
a
possible.
Thornbush. No,
Well, but
it is named after that.
well, okay. But
And
here's what I'm getting at. You're talking about, well, he's up by that. He's up by that. In the case of my last name, there was a day in there from my last name, Lindsay, is a corruption of a Scots Gaelic word meaning Lincoln. And then the last name was originally De Lindsay from Lincoln.
yeah, but
The original um, Walter de Lindsay came from Lincoln to Scotland. And that's what he was known as, Walter from Lincoln.
so the day.
So I'm wondering if maybe something similar to that. Eloy from up there at the
Let me
Escajados.
let me clarify. It's the exact same thing.
Okay.
Well, if 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 this is the there we could give other reasoning, but let's say that this is the thing, because this is what's repeated most often. Because
Hmm.
let me clarify one thing. My last name originates, as I said,
Hmm.
but it also had a day, and everybody
Uh-huh.
in Cantabria, in Andalusia, all across Europe to one degree or the other had the day, and the day is a Spanish thing, but deeper than that, it's a Roman thing or
Hmm.
derived
Yeah.
of that. And we know that the Roman Empire covered Europe,
Hmm.
Western Europe, and beyond. And these people that came up in those times transitioned
Hmm.
from a Roman identity. Sure, they were Gauls, they were people of the British Isles, they were the Spanish, but they were Roman citizens or in the preview of the Roman Empire, and that comes with culture. Rome affected everything.
Yeah.
And out of that came those add-ons plus the
Hmm.
church, because the church controlled
Right.
everything. There was no
Right.
Protestantism, none of that. So it would be natural that the day attached to your Lindsay and the Escajedo, which was also attached to mine,
Hmm.
was of, like you were saying. And so I was of the brush.
Yeah. And I was of Lincoln. And
And not in that I'm aware of in your neck of the woods, but maybe it's true too. In my name, they attached a surname. They attached a previous surname in addition, and it was De la Riva. So my all things being equal, for generations, they would call us De la Riva Escajedo,
hmm,
and De la Riva means the water's edge.
okay.
So the water's edge plus Escajedo could be a brush next to the water's edge.
That's possible. I mean, why not?
So there was a guy living next to the brush in the water's edge, and so but there you
Yeah,
have a thing that's
sure.
like,
And that's where a lot of these names came from. A
yeah,
lot of names.
very hard for me to have
Hmm.
accepted it originally. I did, but to get that in your head,
Hmm.
because we're used to our names as something solid and continuous.
Exactly.
But if you go back into the 1700s, people played around with things depending on situation. Oh, and in fact, one last thing about this, at least on my end, I've mentioned it before, but sometimes a son is born and they'll say, well, you know what? Instead of Escojedo, the father and mother decide,
Hmm.
in memory of his grandmother on his maternal side, we're going to call him Ortega. And now your name is Ortega, and any children you have after that
Or
are
Ortega.
Ortegas.
That makes, oh
And
man, that,
oh yeah,
yeah,
like,
let's complicate things.
well, no, but here's the thing: you may have a brother
Uh-huh.
that's your blood brother, but his name is Escojedo. They
Hmm.
just decided for your butt, you're Ortega, and that's it. And
Yeah.
so now you have descendants today that I see on my internet thing, as an example,
Hmm.
that may be a Sanchez, and I'm like, why do I have a Sanchez so close to me with DNA? Well, that's because zigzagging down the line in memory of or for other reasons, sometimes Jews
Hmm.
would cover their identity,
Hmm.
and that too. So I have whatever portion of Jewish people in the background going back in time, along with
Yeah.
Christians and this and that. So in that mix, now you don't know what the hell's going on when you see all
No.
these cousins, and you're like, well, what's this?
Yeah.
And so that was just the last thing I wanted to say about that. So
Well, add to that, a lot of these surnames, in fact, most of these surnames were given to people. They weren't names that were, passed down from father to son. A lot of them were just given to people. You mentioned Cooper. Well, that's a person who makes barrel staves, you know. So it's, I mean, real easy to figure out. Oh, that's John. He's the guy that makes the horseshoes. He's a blacksmith. So that's John Smith.
well, you know what makes it even weirder? So my Escojedo name today counts worldwide
Hmm.
with about 400 people that are named that.
Really?
That's it. As far as they've documented, and there's
Yeah.
plenty of sites that one can look it up easy.
Hmm.
And 400 is overestimating, but I'm using 400 to
It's
fit
a
what,
nice round number. Yeah.
yeah, but it's less than that. Most of them live in Cantabria, right
Hmm.
where they started.
Hmm.
I exist here in the U.S. because
Yeah.
of what you know, the history
Yeah.
of my grandfather going to Cuba and from there over here. Okay,
Hmm.
well, here's the thing: there's about 400, but in Cantabria,
Hmm.
there were other branches of Escojedos, such as Rodriguez de Escojedos,
Hmm.
in other towns that my ancestors that married with the Escojedos also came from. So
Okay.
here's the thing: some of those Rodriguez de Escojedos
Hmm.
are my ancestors too, and so are my direct Escojedos. So in other words, what I'm getting at is this: on that line, I'm related to all those people in northern Spain
Yeah.
across the board
So there
because
were
they all mix with each other.
a lot of people swimming in that gene pool, is what you're saying.
They were endogamous.
Yeah.
They were highly endogamous.
Yeah.
And the people in the Canary Islands were highly endogamous. I match with people all across all of the Canary Islands.
Hmm.
So basically, I'm a child, if you think of it that way. Literally, at least a quarter of me, I am a child of the Canary Islands, born of them, a quarter of me down the line. And the same way with Cantabria, a quarter of me down the line. And then Andalusia, it would be another quarter. And then I have this Cuban Italian mix. And the Cuban Italian mix, I know the Italian now, but the Cuban, I don't know how long they were in Cuba.
Yeah.
So, and why do I have French DNA? I have like 14, 17% French DNA. That means that I have a chunk of French people coming down that I have not connected with.
Yeah.
There's Louisiana people I connect with. So it's kind of like we come from an endogamous populations. I,
Yeah.
I, I do. Anybody that's European would anyhow. If you're British,
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's
mean, unless it was a marriage of convenience or political gain or something like that, you
yeah, but
know.
in the context of across time,
Mhm.
you end up marrying people
Right.
that married cousins. So you're mixing it up and within the
Right. Within the local area, within the local community, because,
yeah.
travel just, it, with the exception of trade and things like that, travel just basically was out of the reach of the common person,
You know how many
the
times
average person.
you know how many times down my direct Escajedo line, cousins marry each other
Oh, I bet.
directly in my direct. No, that I can actually document. Like
Well, yeah, but look at the small area, and that gets back to what I'm saying. You're talking about a small area because those mountains were not an easy thing to hike over. You know,
oh no no they
and
weren't.
so it's a small area. There's a limited number of people. That's gonna happen.
Well, I was gonna say
It
that.
just is.
uh, well, yeah, well that's what happened across Europe.
Hmm.
To the degree that it did, but it did.
Hmm.
Um, my great second great grandfather married his niece. They were the same age
Yeah,
because he was the youngest of his batch,
and she was the oldest of hers.
and she was, and
But
so
yeah,
that
age wise, yeah, okay.
so there you have a union. And by the way, she was Escajedo on her second surname. On her maternal side, he was Escajedo on his paternal. Going back 2 generations, I have a direct great grandfather that's an Escajedo, married to a great grandmother that's an Escajedo,
Hmm.
that share their parents are siblings,
Oh,
first
geez.
cousin. And then going back further, it continues
Hmm.
with other examples.
Yeah.
Okay. So I am receiving Escajedo up the wazoo down the line, genetically speaking.
Yeah.
But, but that's true through my father's line. But I am an incredible mix because I'm only a quarter from Cantabria.
Hmm.
My father, my grandfather married a Cuban lady of Italian and Cuban ancestry.
Hmm.
So at that moment, the genes were mixed, and my father received Cuba and Italy plus Cantabria on one side. So
Hmm.
he's now receiving DNA that's more mixed, watering down that we were talking about. And
Hmm.
then me, my father that has that mix, married my mom, which has Canary and Andalus half and half.
Hmm.
So I end up um, redistributed,
Yeah.
watering down that situation.
Hmm.
But those genes from Cantabria would probably be repeating themselves because I'm getting it a quarter of the way.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah. No, it doesn't surprise me, and it does. It wouldn't. It probably would surprise a number of people, but not really so when you go back into antiquity. Because again, most people travel was out of reach. They just couldn't go to wherever for the weekend. That just didn't happen.
And I look at people when I'm studying Cantabria
Hmm.
and their faces across the board, roughly,
Hmm.
are recognizable to me. I can see
That looks like Uncle So and So. Yeah.
I can see them in me or me in them. How weird is that?
That's, yeah, pretty strange.
So you know what's going on
But
there. It's exactly
well,
that.
yeah. I mean, there is the odd uh happenstance where you happen to look like somebody, but an entire region, nah,
Well,
that's
not
not
exactly,
happenstance.
but you get
Well,
what I'm saying.
understood. I get you.
Certain
Certain traits,
certain things,
shape
like
of a nose, or ears lower on the head, or something like that. Yeah,
yeah.
you know.
So and so it's that sort of thing, you know. So like the Louisiana people mixed
Hmm.
with French people and Spanish people from the Canaries.
Hmm.
So they have their unique little look, but similar at the same time. So when you look at them, you're like, holy smokes. So
Yeah.
after the fact, now I understand why I've always liked Louisiana and identified with this whole thing, the Spanish influence. It
Mhm.
doesn't get talked about in American culture. Like it's more French. They say.
Well, that's because most folks think of Louisiana, they think of New Orleans, and that's as far as they get. There's a whole state out there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of like when you talk about New York, everybody thinks New York City. There's a whole state out there. It's not just that city.
Well, yeah. And there's lots of incoming different variations that
Sure.
but those people blended in with Spanish and French mostly.
Hmm.
So you get this uniqueness there that when you look at them, you're like, oh, wow, but they look, there's something familiar. So
Hmm.
there's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and that's due to immigration from the old world to the new world, repeating itself again and again and again and again and again. And
Yeah.
by the way, this is a little bit more touchy, but I'll just say it because I think it's true according to, and I'm being honest about it. And as far as it's logistically a truism, I believe to a degree, it's on a scale. A Mexican people that that people often in the United States, not all of them, but certain would assume are not European. They have a certain look, the Speedy
Hmm.
Gonzalez mustache, like all that. Many of those cases, what they're representing is literally European,
Hmm.
Southern European appearances, but people here associate it with some other thing going on. But I've later now come to find that the nuance is that a lot of these people that people will point to as, oh, well, that's not a European person, is actually very much so European. Obviously, they have other components coming
Sure.
into it, but that's the point that I wanted to make. That the appearance thing is a difficult little um, thing to parse out, depending on your reference points.
Hmm.
You know, so I've learned a lot in that regard. So I've my mind has been a little bit more with the doors a little bit more open. So
Yeah, and that happened to me when we got into the genealogy of this family as well. You've got to be open minded, but you also have to set rules. Like we don't accept hearsay anymore. There, we need proof. We need evidence,
yeah,
because a lot of the family folklore that I call it now, every family has their stories. Oh, great grandpa did this, or oh, your uncle on this side did that or the other. A lot of that was proven to be absolutely wrong. And it was simply because of either misunderstandings or somebody boasting or somebody exaggerating their involvement in something. Like I was taught growing up that Oregon Caves National Park here, not too far away from us, was discovered by one of my relatives by marriage on my it would be my grandfather's sister's side by marriage. Her husband. It was one of his relatives that discovered the caves. Turns out he was there, but he didn't actually go into the cave until after they had been discovered. So, an exaggeration of importance led to this whole thing about, well, he discovered those caves. No, he didn't.
yeah.
He was involved and he did explore them. He was one of the first to explore them. But somebody else actually found the cave, come back and got this. They were a hunting party. They were all out hunting. He just some guy discovered the cave, came back and got the rest of them, and they all went in and explored it.
Well, but that's close
So,
enough.
well, he was an early explorer, but he didn't actually discover it. But to hear the family talk, you'd think that he was out there by himself all alone. And that just didn't happen, you know.
Okay, so accuracy, but
Right.
it's close enough handed down the other way where it's not a complete wash.
Right. And that's the point. It's the accuracy and the retelling as it's passed down, because one person forgets one fragment and doesn't pass that along, and then that happens again and again, and by the time it gets to you, you don't know what to believe. Well,
Yeah.
so basically, it's a case of, unless somebody can document or give me evidence of it, I'll set it aside. I won't completely discount it, but I'm not going to say, yeah, that's a fact, you know.
Yeah, you have to leave the door open for the possibility of error because
Hmm.
you just don't have the information.
Right. Exactly. And that's why I don't discount it, because some of it has turned out to have been true. And we have found documentation to back it up. And then we had only heard part of the story, you know. So it was just, and a lot of it also gets confused because of similar names. So I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, a lot of the things that we've believed about the history of people
Hmm.
coming from Europe and other places, but let's just say Europe, up until 10 years ago was one thing.
Hmm.
And now with genetics, the explosion of the technology, um, it's changed a lot of things.
It has.
Um, there was an assumption that the Greeks today
Hmm.
were replaced. So the Greeks today aren't really the Greeks of yesteryear.
Hmm.
And one genealogist or geneticist explained that during the Ottoman,
Hmm.
the British sent forces to liberate and to clear out the decks, let's say.
Hmm.
And when they got there, they were taken aback by the way the Greeks looked.
Hmm.
The British assumed that these bringers of philosophy and art
Yeah.
and 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 architecture would have looked like them, like people from the British Isles,
Yeah.
because their identity is that, well, we're European, and this is what European looks like. And there were stragglers that traveled and this and that, of course. I mean, that's not, but the bulk of them that we haven't gone and visited, it has to be that these people look like
Yeah.
Northwestern European people, like on a gradient.
Yeah.
And they were very disappointed because these people, these Greek people of their modern era, had some sort of Mediterranean, but what they considered some sort of um, Middle Eastern vibration
Hmm.
going on.
Yeah.
What's going on here? And they were disappointed. They said they must have been replaced. Like these Greek people,
Yeah. Or not the original Greeks.
they're not the original. They
They
can't.
they bust them all out and brought in a bunch of new crop. Yeah.
And the same thing happens with Romans, by the way.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens with. But here's the thing: they've discovered ever since, and there's papers on it. Like they go
Hmm.
into detail explain the genetics of it. They've tested their genetics with
Hmm.
ancient bones. They're the same people. I mean, on a gradient, Mark,
Sure.
an English person today is not necessarily the same as
That would have been at 800 BC. Yeah.
right, because there's influx of DNA coming from other relations.
Sure.
It just is because that's how it goes. So we're not the people of the past, although we are at the same time. We're a new mixture of that,
Yep.
and that's been going on forever. So, although to be fair,
Man.
these Greeks, as well as across southern Europe,
Mm.
had the Arab invasions, caliphates, and such. So there are components of that, like with Spain. There's components of that in Spain, but not high.
Yeah.
1%, 2%. What is high compared to the rest of Europe and Spain, as an example, is North African DNA. But
Mhm.
the North African DNA is most of it, much of it is pre Muslim times. Because the Muslims came from the East, mixed with the Berber populations, or used the Berber populations that converted, attacked Spain or the Iberian Peninsula, and set up camp. They weren't allowed to marry, but they had babies. because
Yeah.
you're talking 800 years, 700 and something years, 800 years.
Yeah.
But their population was small compared to the rest of the Iberian Christian population. So the import that people assume that, oh, well, Spanish are it's true to a degree, but it's not to the degree that people think. In my case, I have um, gen- uh, Canary Island
Hmm.
ancestry, and through there, the people that were originally from there were, were North African derived type people during Roman times and before.
Hmm.
Some were there. They don't know for sure, but they say at least Roman times. These people were marooned there. They went there for an expedition. I don't know. Nobody knows. It's just that they carried African, North African genetics. Um, but some of them carried European paternal groups too. It looks like they had something to do with the Roman Empire at some degree. So I got that coming to me as well. It's watered down now, but I've
Yeah.
got it coming down. And these people were in the Stone Age.
Hmm.
These people were in the so I've got that
Well, they
coming.
had no industry, so yeah.
Yeah.
When you don't have
So
the resources, you use what you got.
they forgot how to sail. They forgot how to use certain tools. When they got there, when the Europeans got there, these people have had animals from Europe,
Hmm.
had seeds from Europe, and they looked. Some of them, let's put it this way, they looked to them like people of Northwestern Europe. Some were blonde. What's
Hmm.
going on here? What's going on with these people? Now, not all of them were blonde. Some people
Hmm.
were, but that's not the point. The point is that they looked similar to Europeans enough
Hmm.
that the Europeans were thinking, well, are these the lost Atlanteans?
Yeah.
They were even saying, so now legends have occurred to
Hmm.
this day that, oh, well, those people were the Atlanteans.
And then you have stories passed down generation to generation to generation, and the current generation doesn't know how they got there.
Yeah, they
They
have,
just are. Yeah, you know.
yeah, yeah, because
So,
people lose the storyline.
well, yeah, as somebody forgets a detail, it's omitted from the story, and then the person transporting that story down to their kids doesn't know to include that.
Yeah, and
And
people
Lord
died,
knows what he forgets, you
and
know.
people died en masse with diseases and wars.
Yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
what do you do with a kid that survived? His family was wiped out, and they keep having babies in the future. They don't know
Yeah.
nothing.
Nope.
So there's stuff like that too. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
or orphan babies.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we don't, you know.
when you look at the Black Death, a lot of the history is going to stop. A lot of recorded history stops right about the time of the Black Death because any study of what happened before that just kind of ended because people were dealing with that. I mean, it wiped out. I mean, it depends on who you talk to. I've heard anywhere from a quarter to a half of the population. Just depends upon which region you're talking about. But history before the Black Death is pretty sketchy at best
And there were
and
various
spotty at
installments.
worst.
There were various installments of the plague.
Hmm.
It wasn't just a one off. It was like
No,
various times.
it was, yes, it over the course of several times, and it kept recurring.
Yeah,
I mean, all the way up into the 1600s.
they found um, Russian Black Death
Hmm.
in Cantabrian graves.
Yep.
Because the thing is that at one point, even though it seems like not, but this is what the evidence is pointing to, people moved. Like we've had that discussion before, but the
Hmm.
evidence is kind of pointing to people moved an awful lot.
They did.
Um, and exchanged women. Women, like for instance, a woman in Spain, just broadly.
Very often against their will, trust me.
Well, I'm saying today, a woman in Spain today may
Hmm.
have the genetic markers that a Russian woman or a woman from the Netherlands has,
Hmm.
connecting them directly to
Yep.
one source population. And on the male side, the dominant one, as you know, is R1B, like that's bred mostly. A man from Spain or of Spanish origin, myself, connects with people in the British Isles by the name of May, by the name of. There's some names that are. I don't know if it was Fitzgerald. There's a bunch of names. Brown. There's just a ton of names that are located in the British Isles. We share a common father. It's just that that father is back in the Bronze Age.
Yeah.
That one father is in the Bronze Age. So it's all intermingled. But up till 10 years ago, people thought that, well, English people are English people, and they are, but the extra information now changes stuff all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
Russia is closer to us than ever before in terms of ancestry. So, but people can't deal with that, like, because we have established norms.
Well, yeah, we have established norms and we have established and adopted identities.
Yeah.
I'll use myself as an example. For years, my entire life, I was brought up hearing that I was Scottish and English and possibly a little bit of German. They weren't sure. On my grandmother's side, I made a couple of discoveries there and she didn't know about. And I'm talking about my great grandmother on my father's side. Um, and then we went through the Lindsay DNA project, and my father, did his DNA and what have you. And then we discovered that, yeah, down the line or up the line from me, from America into England, and then in one generation back up to Scotland, and from there back down to England, and then over into what is currently Belgium and Luxembourg. So my entire life I've been told, well, you're Scottish, only to find out that if you go back far enough, I'm Belgian. Well, how about we go back further from there? Where do we go? Well, genetically speaking, you could go back to Macedonia because that's where my haplogroup originated and where it mostly comes from. You know, you're the R1B, right? I'm I2A. And that's that Eastern European around Macedonia, that area there. So,
Yeah.
but
The thing.
we've adopted these identities and these nationalities based on family folklore and family history. You have to admit. But if you go back far enough, where do you stop? That's what I'm getting at.
No, you
At
can't.
at
No,
what
it's a continuum, dude.
exactly my point. At what point did I stop being Scottish and start being English, then stop being English and start being Belgian?
Yeah.
You can't do that. You
Well,
have to
no,
accept that you're a mutt. You can't make exceptions, say, oh no, I'm Scottish,
no, but
because I'm
okay.
right and wrong at the same time.
Well, but it depends on the context, as you're saying.
Hmm.
So, as an example, R1B,
Hmm.
like let's take the British Isles because R1B is the broadest one
Hmm.
known in
In,
Iberia.
yeah.
So Spanish people across the board have more R1B. I'm an
Hmm.
example of that.
Yeah.
But let's take England for they're also across the board R1B.
Hmm.
But if you trace those two going back in time, like you just did right now with your ancestors,
Hmm.
if you trace those people, the British and the Spanish, and the German and the Dutch, and the French, and the Hungarian, and the Austrians, and the people from Liechtenstein, and the people
Yeah.
from the Alps, and the people from Italy and Sardinia, all converge into one R. And that R It depends on how far down the line, but that R originates
Mhm.
out in the Urals, going into China. So all these people, like Jim said, well, something to the effect of that white people in the Bible and stuff. The white category, as I've suggested in the past, and I emphasize on it, is likewise a man-made thing of the past 300 and some odd years. In the way that we interpret it, there's no such thing in a genetic sense, but there is culturally. But if you were to push forward that R in that area that's China today and go to our current time, you could also argue, hey, all of you guys originate out in the Urals up there, and it would be true. But there's other people in the Urals today. Some of them do have R1B, by the way, but they're culturally for thousands of years mixing with people of their area. So they've become their thing, but that one component links them to people in the this side of the thing. So it's such a constant mixing of people
Yeah.
that it doesn't match with what we believed all this time up until actually 10 years ago, roughly. And that has set the world afire in as much as the people that are aware of it are. Um, but the people that aren't aware of it, when they hear the last thing I'll say about this, there's a person called Cheddarman,
Hmm.
and they've made a bust of Cheddarman,
Hmm.
and it's a dark skinned person. By dark, I mean like dark,
Hmm.
and his eyes are light. Cheddar Man was found in England, south of
Hmm.
England, near Stonehenge, and British people share up, up to 10% of their DNA with that Cheddar Man.
Hmm.
Okay, um, and that's a fact. I've had people argue that, well, his skin was dark, but not that dark. That argument
Yeah.
is neither here nor there because the point is, it ain't what people look like today,
It
brother.
ain't like me, blonde haired,
Right.
gray eyed,
That did that didn't exist.
yeah,
What?
pale blue complexion. Yeah.
Yeah, your look didn't. My look. Okay, my look was more common in
Hmm.
Europe, everywhere in Europe. Um, dark hair, dark
Hmm.
eyes and such.
This comes from lack of sunshine over centuries.
Dark hair, dark eyes with
Hmm.
light to medium. I actually rate light to medium, and if
Hmm.
and I can tan and this and that. That was the common thread. That
Hmm.
was the European thread. But um, but that kept mixing, and it became what it became. And some people have more farmer population, other people have more, and so it varies. But they're all mixed with each other. It's just that the frequencies are different,
Yeah.
and so you get different appearances and this and that. But so and you have that. But Cheddar Man, if whether he was that dark or slightly lighter, his genes contained the same genes
Hmm.
for skin color
Hmm.
that exists in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah.
You can still say, well, maybe not true, but all the information points to them having dark skin and light eyes. We get the light eyes from them.
Cheddar Man had black hair, dark skin, and blue eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how that spread.
Hmm.
But those hunter gatherers mixed with farmers that had light skin.
Hmm.
So I'm mostly farmer. I'm up to 60% farmer. Me, because Southern Europe is the highest amount of farmer. That's why they're. It's not the only reason. There could be people that have been married with people of other population. That's true. But the general thing of Southern Europe is leaning towards high farmer population. If you look at British people's farmer population, it's slightly lower, although it's still elevated. Um, they have high hunter gatherer and they have high Yamnaya or pastoralists that came from
Mhm.
Russia, and so you have that mix. So there's overlap and all this and that. But Cheddar Man,
Mhm.
it just is,
Well,
and but people take offense to it because they're not aware of the accounting, and they think some people think that it's an attack on Europeans and this, when the fact is that there's your European, there's your actual Europe. So in fact, last thing I'll say about this, although they say it wrong, but when these certain people say that all of Europe was of a certain persuasion, the
mhm.
people that like to like
Yeah.
hound on certain groups, you get what I'm saying without saying.
Mhm.
In a sense, they're right if you use that method of just pure skin color. But there's more to it than that. Skin color is one thing. It's not, and it's adaptable.
Mhm.
And it
That's
was,
what I mean. This
yeah,
comes from centuries of being without sun. You go meet up with anybody native whose ancestry is as Irish or as Scottish as can be. They have less sunlight there. They are extremely pale skinned. They made me look like sub-Saharan African,
yep.
you know? They're
The
they're almost transparent. They're so lily white. It's not even funny.
the Picts
Mhm.
were dark skinned people, by the way.
Yeah.
The
Pic
Vikings,
Pictish? Yes.
the Pictish, they were dark skinned people.
Mhm.
The Vikings that we look at as blonde and this and that,
Mhm.
not true.
Now
Resoundingly not true. However, there's a caveat. Some were,
mhm.
and some were not. And in that mix, some genes win out over others, push people to look
Dominant gene won over. Yeah.
lighter or whatnot, and that's how it ends up happening. It just is according to the genetics and stuff.
Yeah.
But we have a different understanding in our world because we grew up in a different reality.
And
It's it is
well,
what it is.
let's also take geographical um, changes. Um, Cheddar Man. How old is do they estimate Cheddar Man is?
He was Stone Age person,
Yeah,
so
but I
we're
mean,
going thousands of.
we're talking thousands of years back?
Oh yeah,
Remember that it was about 6,000 years ago, maybe 7,000 years ago, Britain was a peninsula of continental Europe.
yeah.
And it wasn't until Doggerland collapsed that Britain became islands. The
Mhm.
English Channel, as it's known today, is only about 6 or 7,000 years old. So if Cheddar Man predates that, very well could have been a hunter gatherer,
Oh, he was a hunter gatherer.
you know.
He was a hunter gatherer.
Oh, he was a hunter gatherer. Okay,
Yeah.
but what I'm getting at is God knows where he came from.
Oh, he came from Africa.
So,
Not him himself, but
okay, there it is.
the population that he sprang from,
Mhm.
10,000 years. The population that he sprang from can be traced back to Africa.
Well, understood, but what I'm talking about is where he himself came from. He
He
may
was
have come from mainland Europe, and if he lived 10,000 years ago, it's quite possible that he came from mainland Europe and was just whatever happened to him, and he died.
yeah, they
And
traveled. No, yeah, they traveled from mainland Europe into the British Isles.
oh, yeah, I know that's what I'm
Yeah,
getting at.
yeah,
But it
they
was a
did.
heck of a lot easier when it was all land out there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they have found evidence, underwater evidence, obviously, of man-made structures down at the seafloor in the English Channel from when that was a land bridge there. So they know people lived there. So it's no stretch of the imagination to think that this person from mainland Europe was there long before England became an island or Great
Oh
Britain
yeah.
became an island.
Oh yeah. And well, another thing, the light skin aspect, people take offense to it because it's a little bit shocking. And even the museum, the British Museum, when they talk about Judder Man, they even have a disclaimer that says this may shock some people today. So they're basically warning people before they keep reading, because there's a set standard in our heads, and it is what it
Mhm.
is. But the light skin aspect, actually originates. It originated in various places, but it originates mostly in the Middle East.
Hmm.
In the Middle East. But if you look at people in the Middle East, you may not consider them as a, but there's a gradient to what light skin is and what isn't.
Hmm.
And those people, at least back in they brought forth, and even today,
Hmm.
you see people that are green eyed, blue eyed, that look like they came out of what we would imagine from our vantage point, the mountains of Zeus's home thing. It's our point of reference. So there's all that. But how
Yeah.
would I have known that my ancestors paternally
Mhm.
in the Bronze Age actually ended up where Jamie Page lives in Kent? For about 300 to 400 years, I have a generation after generation of people being born as my fathers,
Hmm.
and then they moved to France,
Hmm.
and then down to Spain.
Well, there's where the French part comes.
But but it,
Well,
it
I'm just throwing it out there, man.
but in this case it doesn't, because this is not an autosomal
Hmm.
figure. This is
Hmm.
only a paternal direct.
Right.
That's nothing.
I'm just throwing it out there.
No, but to clarify,
Hmm.
they were in France as well for who
Hmm.
knows how long. Um, but they were originally in the Urals.
Well, yeah, understood. But we also have to remember that that border between Spain and France was drawn by men. That's a man-made construct. So you had people from both sides when they could get there, visiting and traveling and doing this, that, and the other. It was only when somebody come along and drew a line there and said, "No, that's them. This is us," that this all became a thing. You know.
Well, the the there is a natural border, which is the Pyrenees,
Sure.
but there's ways through.
Hmm.
But the people of France, of southern France, and the people of Spain,
Hmm.
northern Spain, plot close to each other
Hmm.
because they simply are geographically close to each other. So,
Exactly.
so you could, in theory, just say a southern French person is genetically close to a
Hmm.
Spanish northern person. Just like you could say that an
Yeah.
English person is close to a Scottish person.
They are very close.
Right. It's the same difference, is what I'm saying.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but you know, so it's a crazy layout of what went on that we're learning about till this day
Hmm.
within the last 10 years, and
And
I
you,
became aware of now.
well, you talked about how this was starting fires in certain areas. Those fires are only going to get fanned and become hotter as more and more technology discovers more and more secrets. So I don't know. The
They
whole thing is fascinating to me, and
it
I
is.
I think what we have to do is keep an open mind. We're bound to be surprised,
Well, they
but
found. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
just in the last 10 years, so many things that we knew were absolute facts just turned out to be not facts at all.
They've also found that American Indians,
Hmm.
although it was a very, very long time ago,
Hmm.
you can connect them to Europeans
Hmm.
genetically. It's just that it was a very, very long time ago, and they split in
Hmm.
different directions. They've figured that out. So, in a strange sense, when we engage with Native Americans, they're cousins. Although, again, there's a time gap.
Yeah, 100,000 years, or well, not that far back, about 30,000 years or something like that.
Whatever the case is, it's during
Mhm.
the land bridge situation.
Yeah.
And so, but you see, what's cool about that is, I'm going to throw this out there. What's cool about that is that certain arguments that are used in what we started talking about, that we don't like, that politics is like too heavy, but certain political arguments that are used based on like group references, this sort of technology of genetics and this and that is ruining some key arguments that people held on to.
And that's what I mean by those flames are just going to get hotter
Yeah.
because identity politics is going to kind of get shot down.
Well, they'll have to figure out other ways to be creative and figure a way around it. because they could go through they could go the route of culture, but the point is that the concept of, oh well, these people are like, dare I say it, slightly less than due to X, Y, and Z. Um, Broadly, that thought, due to colonial,
Yeah.
just divisions that happen, is no longer as usable as it was before, and I'm kind of pleased
Well,
with it, Mark. Um, I'm kind of pleased. So I considered myself Spanish all the time, always, but really American. But my heritage was Spanish. But I left it at that. And one time I
mhm,
talked to my dad and saying, "Oh, Dad, and he said, son, keep in mind that the Muslims were in Spain for over 800 years." He was quite aware of the history of it,
mhm,
and he figured, according to what he said, I draw from that, that he figured that we had incoming from the Middle East.
mhm,
Well, guess what? It's absolutely true, but it's actually true for all Europeans.
mhm.
And so, um, but it's on a gradient too. So I'm kind of pleased with that because it's just the history of it, and they'll tweak the problems as they go along,
Well,
where
of course,
an error is made.
never underestimate their ability to find things to divide people over. And that's what make no mistake, that's what it is. It's all a game about division. We have to divide people any way we can, because the most dangerous thing to the biggest threat to their power
Is unities.
is civil discussion like we're doing right now. That's the biggest threat to their power, because the minute people realize that they get along and there are more similarities than there are differences, they got no power anymore. Then they got to go out and get real jobs, and God, they don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So, and that right, that there is one of the main reasons I don't listen to the BS. I
Yeah.
don't. I don't care about it. It has no effect on the way I live my life. Not anymore. It did for too many years. Not anymore. I figure life is too short, and I'm going to enjoy while I can.
No, I get that. I understood that, and but again, to process it or internalize it properly,
Hmm.
or as close as possible to what you are explaining, it takes a person that's open-minded, but to them internalize it not only intellectually,
Well,
like I get the calculation,
hmm,
but in order to have it in your system as a thing,
hmm,
whether you accept it or not, like if you don't accept it, you don't accept it. But
sure.
if you find value in that idea, which I
Hmm.
have, Mark, and I'm the first, it's not natural for one to praise or not praise, but admit ideas out there from others as valid,
Hmm.
because hell, I didn't come up with it, or
Yeah.
but it's good to verbalize that, hey, dude, that idea of yours, I don't do it as often, but that was a valid idea, dude. I disagree because of X, Y, and Z, but it doesn't make it less valid.
but
You know what I'm
but
saying?
that's fine. But that's the big thing. I'm not asking anybody to think the way I think. I just want people to think for themselves.
No, I get that, but my argument here is,
Hmm.
or my whatever, because we have a difference of opinion with the word, but you get my use of it, is that from my vantage point, it's more useful,
Hmm.
although it would be a Johnny come lately thing on depending on the issue, because I have to struggle with, well, no, Mark said that, but yeah, that's not the puzzle's not fitting for me. I can see why, but nah, I'm
It
not gonna.
works for him, but not for me.
Right, and that process of cleaning out what something is for the value of it
Hmm.
may take me quite a while, or it may be instant, but the deciding factor is using my head,
Hmm.
internalizing it, and also trying, which I don't have, broadly speaking. I try consciously because I know it's the right direction. I fail all the time. Is to have a little bit of humility to allow the doors to be open to receive. It's very hard for a human to do broadly because we're not wired like that.
And I got to tell you, it gets harder to do as you get older because you become more and more convinced that your opinions are right just by watching the world. You know, if you're convinced that, I don't know, people that drive Ford pickups are this, that, and the other based on your observation, that's just going to confirm your bias. You're not going to notice, I mean, that's that confirmation bias thing. You're not going to notice all the people that drive Ford trucks that are completely different from your stereotype, but you're less willing to admit that those people even exist based on your bias, based on your experience.
Yeah, and if
You know,
confronted
hmm
with alternate points,
hmm
one generally is on the defensive,
hmm
and I've encountered that constantly, and I participated in it too.
hmm
It's a human trait,
yeah.
and it's a human trait, but
And it goes in all directions. It can be about anything. I mean, you take a farmer that's been raising corn his entire life, and he knows to lay down 2 pounds of fertilizer. If you try to tell him you're getting better yields than him because you put down 3 pounds of fertilizer instead of two, a certain percentage will say, okay, I'll give it a shot. And another percentage will say, I've been doing this for 50 years. I know what I'm doing, you
yeah,
know. And I tend to fall into that camp. I've been doing it this way for so, and I have to try to, okay, let's see. How does this work? Let's see if it'll work.
I fall into that camp too, Mark. If I've gotten comfortable with a procedure
Mm-hmm.
that works,
Mm-hmm.
I like to leave it be.
Yeah. Well,
Um, but well, but, well, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if somebody can show me that this way works a little better or is a little easier, and I get just as good or better result, I'll try it.
But then there's habit.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get the habit,
Mm-hmm.
you might keep doing
Mm-hmm.
the same thing, even though now you have a second reference.
Yeah.
You might say, "I'm just comfortable. Screw that."
Yeah.
And I'm doing
Exactly.
this because I'm thinking computer wise, like
Well,
with Photoshop.
it. You're right-handed, correct?
Yeah,
What would you do if I handed you a left-handed guitar? You'd kind of be lost for a while, wouldn't you?
for a long time.
Because habit. You've learned to fret with your left hand and play the strings with your right. Now you throw it backwards. Unless you try to pluck up here on the neck and fret down here over
Yeah.
the sound hole, it's going to be kind of, you know. So yeah, habit is absolutely a legitimate roadblock, I guess.
You know what Unknown Hinson said? He said when he was a little kid, he started playing since the age he was 5.
Mm-hmm.
And my daddy, the only thing I remember is that he handed me a guitar and he told me, "Here, son, play it." And I grabbed it and played it left hand, and he took it from my hands and said, "Play it like a man." He flipped it over, and but I was left-handed, so I'm the only dumbass out there that can play. Um, he said the only. I'm paraphrasing, left-handed or right-handed when I'm actually a left-handed guitarist. Jimi Hendrix could do that, but the point is
I,
that
I
he's
was
saying
just go ahead.
no. The point is that he's telling a story of all the like the dad ripping the guitar and says that's how girls play. You do it this way, and but it's like, dude, I'm left-handed, and it's like it's a funny story. You know what I'm saying? In the way he told it.
Well, as you're saying that, I'm thinking he stole that from Jimi Hendrix because Jimi Hendrix was left-handed. He played left-handed,
Yeah,
and the story I heard was his dad kept telling him, "No, no, turn it around, play it right-handed."
yeah.
So he would do that whenever his dad was around, but he taught himself how to play an upside down, how to play a right-handed guitar left-handed with the high string up on top and the low string down on the bottom. He could play both.
And by the way, let me correct myself. I said Unknown Henson.
Mhm.
It might be Nikki Six from Motley Crue.
Who said that?
Yeah, I might have. Yeah,
Well, they all start running together after a little while.
that's the problem. That stories start to
Uh-huh.
merge.
And that's the problem, and that's what I'm getting at with family folklore, because things get passed down and get turned around, and you and I are prime examples of that. We'll mix up 4 or 5 different people in our heads and attribute one story to one. I mean, 2/3 of the quotes in this world are attributed either to Mark Twain, Winston Churchill, or
Einstein.
who?
Einstein.
Einstein's another one, but
Yeah.
there's another Will Rogers. When probably half of the quotes attributed to him, they never said.
Yeah, I've seen that
You know,
happen.
so
I've seen that happen.
I'll give you a good example. It's not the size of the dog in the fight; it's the size of the fight in the dog. Now, Mark Twain's attributed to that quote. It actually came from Dwight Eisenhower. Mark Twain never said it. Mark Twain died and was buried long before that quote was ever in existence.
But his picture's plastered on it.
Uh-huh. It just sounds like something he would say,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah, we're what's the word? Derivatives of stuff. We're derivatives of stuff, and
Yeah.
then we're unique at the same time,
Well,
but we're a combination of derivatives.
we are the culmination of our experiences, and some of them we remember, some of them we don't, and some of them we don't remember where we got that information from, and we don't remember all of it, but we remember a little bit. And so I'm going to tell you, even though I don't remember everything, you know. Yeah, Linda is right-handed, but plays the bagpipes left-handed. Nobody has noticed yet. A few people have noticed, but you've had to point it out to them. And once you do point it out to them, it's funny to watch her, because when people watch her play, they're kind of looking at her hands and they know something's not right, but they can't figure out what.
Yeah.
So,
Paul McCartney's left-handed too.
yep, yep,
I mean, some people are, and you can't force.
no.
Oh well,
Well,
this is
well,
the way.
you can try. My mother was left-handed, and growing up, her parents kept trying to, no, use your other hand, no, use your other hand, and she's, I
It
can't, and
worked
they
that way.
finally came to the conclusion, okay, she must be left-handed. So,
Let me
but
tell you my sob story.
no,
Within the past 2 months, I've had my dog get ill.
mm-hmm.
I've had my car disabled. I've had my neck totally screwed up to the point that I can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, Septic issues, just one thing after the other, piling up, piling up, piling up.
Mm-hmm.
I had to wait for my neck so I could go resolve certain problems.
Mm-hmm.
I carried my dog to the vet in my arms
Mm-hmm.
across town
Mm-hmm.
with my neck still screwed up. Um, and he's gotten better, but he's getting old, dude. And it's one of
Mm-hmm.
those things. Um, then I went about fixing my car.
Mm-hmm.
I was on bus for 2 months.
Yeah.
I got the car fixed, which was a seal,
Mm-hmm.
the water seal or whatever.
Freeze plug.
Yeah. And then it kept leaking water. I didn't tell you that part. Or
Mm-mm.
actually, I did the other night. Maybe I don't know. But this past week, it was leaking water on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I did investigations
Mm-hmm.
and found a part which is a valve, some sort of water valve thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I went walking to buy the thing at the place and came back exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Got up in the hood, changed it,
Mm-hmm.
turned on the car, no water leaking. Turned it on, turned it back on, no water leaking. I said, one more try. then water leaking. And I was like, oh, I just changed a whole brand new thing. It's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
Although the piece was already corroded and broken.
Yeah.
So it was leaking from there too.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't the only leak.
Mm-hmm.
So it was another freeze plug on the opposite side.
Oh, geez.
I filled the car up with water,
Mm-hmm.
drove it half crossed the extent of Sweetwater,
Mm-hmm.
took it to the mechanic, and they said, okay, we'll call you. I walked again and got home. I didn't sleep well that last
Mm-hmm.
night. This was today.
Mm-hmm.
I sat in the chair waiting, like just hallucinating.
Mm-hmm.
And then they called, oh, we locked your keys in the car. Do you have any spare? And I'm all the way here and I walked on foot. I haven't slept.
Mm-hmm.
I'm destroyed, Mark. And I said, no, I don't. Okay, we'll figure it out. What do you mean? Now I'm worried
Mm-hmm.
because you can bust things real good. I called them back because I remembered that my hatch
Mm-hmm.
was open so they can crawl through there.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, okay, you can come pick it up. I walked sheer across town again.
Mm-hmm.
It cost me more than the other one.
Oh, geez.
I was in no position to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Got in my car, drove home. My back hatchback window,
Mm-hmm.
the screws that hold it in,
Mm-hmm.
had come off. They went through the hatchback as opposed to, they went through the window as opposed to the hatchback.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have a wonky, I have to rescrew them. It's not
Yeah.
the end of the world. I can fix that, but that's not the point. The point is another thing.
Mm-hmm.
No leaking
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever. Everything's fine. But the night prior when I was installing, I'm
Mm-hmm.
ending the story now. The last night, the transfer valve or whatever the valve, water
Mm-hmm.
valve, Vigo, since he's feeling ill, has been sitting in the his bed
Mm-hmm.
and like not going out nowhere. So I took the hose, left the gate open for just a short while, and started to spray it and stuff. And I was like hot and exhausted. Last night,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't sleep well the whole night, and then this other thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then I turn around and walk in the house for a moment because I'm gonna get done with doing that. And Vigo's gone.
Shit.
He decided to get up,
Mm-hmm.
walk out the gate, and explore Sweetwater. And I started screaming, Vigo, Vigo. I ran that way in flip flops,
Mm-hmm.
that way. And like, you know, that feeling
Yeah.
of like, dun, 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 dun. Like, no, because I could picture the problems that could have, it just, no, no,
Mm-hmm.
please, no, I don't want to. And I ran in flip flops that way. And a lady was walking her dog.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me. All she did was look at me. She says, he's over on the next block. In the little short time I left the gate open to
Mm-hmm.
bring the hose and water a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
he had transferred over 3 blocks.
Yeah. When a dog gets to exploring, man, I mean, blinders. That's it.
And I had to carry him
Mm-hmm.
all the way. When I got here, I was huffing and puffing. Didn't sleep the whole night. And then this whole thing that I just said now. 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets worse. I can't tell you the rest of it publicly, but let's put it this way. It gets worse, but it's better than what it was. But in order to get to this point where some stuff is functioning, I had to go through this whole thing. And to be fair, I accepted it as okay.
Yeah.
Because what else are you going to do?
Yeah. 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 I mean, you can kick the
How
fence
about
post, and that's about all. You
how
know.
about them apples, dude? It's like
Yeah.
the walking alone, Mark, has been insane in the past 24 hours. And that's partly why I got to the green room
Hmm.
a little bit later,
Yeah.
and I have not eaten. Um,
Sounds like an early night.
Exhausted. Well, yeah, more or less. I'm okay. I'm exhausted.
Hmm.
Like really exhausted. But I just wanted to share that it was a whirlwind,
I'm
and
with you. I'm with you.
because without the car, right? There's
Yeah.
issues.
Well, it will get better. It will get better. One way or
Um,
another, it will get better.
I have an old saying.
What's that?
Um, and it came from you. I've adopted it, and I'm going to say it just literally as you said it.
No, you're not.
If it's thundering outside, I I don't want to say it because I might jinx myself. So let's just leave it.
Yeah, that's true too. There are I'll give you an example of that. And this is to show how superstitious we all are. Because I mean, everybody is guilty of something similar to this, and to one degree or another. Linda and I have been talking about getting her a new car for close to a year now. And I'm really getting serious because her Jeep, it's a 2004. It's 20 years old, I believe, this month, because I think we got it in September of '04. She drove it off the lot. Excuse me, I got the hiccups all of a sudden. She drove it off the lot with 25 miles on it, and she put 12 of those miles on it during the test drive. So, brand new car. Well, 20 years later, it's about 400 miles away from hitting 250,000 miles.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's getting old. I mean, it's not getting old, it's old. She needs
yeah.
a new car. We won't talk about it while we're in that car because it's almost like you're going to jinx it. The car's like, oh, really? You're going to replace me? Show's over. I'm tired.
Yep,
Poof, and die right in the middle of the highway.
yeah.
You know?
That's superstition, but guess what? It gets us through the night. And I'll tell
Yeah.
you what, Mark, my Ford,
Mm-hmm.
people dog on Fords all day long.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had that since 2005, 1 year after yours,
Mm-hmm.
it's from it's a 1999.
Mm-hmm.
And across the course of this history, it has left me stranded 2 or 3 times across almost 20 years at best.
No, that Jeep has been through hell. It's been totaled. Well, not totaled. It's on its third front end. Um, I mean, it's done all kinds of stuff. It's never left us stranded. We've
Well,
always been able to get home
one
with.
time my water got screwed up, so I had to stop it.
Mhm.
And you can't. So that did happen. And other
Yeah.
times, I didn't fuel up enough and got
Hmm.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, because I've been with that truck since I
Hmm.
was in my 20s.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she was coming up a hill headed towards she was headed to Reno to go to the airport. She had to fly out for a conference back east somewhere. She got up at the top of the hill coming out of Carson City, Nevada, and come around a corner, and there's a herd of deer in the middle of the freeway. It's, dark early in the morning. She hit two of them. Anybody can hit a deer. She hit two of them, and that wiped out the front end. So I had to go, it got towed and all this other good stuff. I drove her to the airport and all that
Why
other,
is it?
and it
What's
got repaired.
what's the story with head? What's the story with illuminance and the deer looking and saying, "Oh yeah,"
Well, they just see it and don't know what to do.
like a train. And they're like,
Exactly.
"Come on, everybody, let's
Exactly.
go! They're calling
Um,
us."
she got run off the road in the snow, wiped out that front end. And so another front end got put on it. But it has just kept plugging away and plugging away and plugging away. Um, yeah, she said 10 deer ran left, two ran right. And she got the two that ran right. So
which they ran wrong. But
they ran, yeah, exactly.
yeah, I'll tell you what though, Mark. All that
So
said about my in my reference point of my truck
mhm.
over the 20-year span, at this point, it it may decide when and when not to, I don't know, turn some mechanisms on and off.
Mhm.
It might decide that one day, no, I'm not with you today. I'm gonna go ahead and not service you, sir. So
Yeah,
you just leave me. It may do that from now on,
yeah.
but
Well, I
you
mean,
know,
there are certain things like that. Went out to go get into it one day, and it just battery. No, not gonna do it. Sorry. There's a little thing with this year of Jeep, and I don't understand why or how. But if you try to start it and it just and then key it off, the rear door lock on the rear hatch door, it flicks. You'll hear this little click, 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 click when you shut the key off. It'll do that for about 5 minutes and then it stops. I don't know why it doesn't. I don't know how it does it. But if you go in to Google and you look up that symptom, first thing on the list, dead battery. Pull the battery out, jump in the other car, take it down. They test the battery. Sure enough, this sucker is deader than hail. Give me a new one of them. So,
yeah.
in 20 years, this is the third battery, fourth set of tires, and we just replace the air filters as needed,
Well, it's done a good
and get
job.
the
Also,
oil change and do all that. Just had the radiator flush and fill done on it Friday, as a matter of fact, last Friday. And, it'll keep going, but it's getting old. We don't trust it. So I got to get her something new. And I don't dare count my pickup because it's 2002. It's 2 years older, and it's got 200,000 miles on it. So, you know, but we won't talk about that in the car. Like we think the car's going to hear us.
no, but it's there's something to the universe. Remember the double slit experiment. Reality reacts according to our observation.
Our perceptions, yeah.
Yeah, our observation. If we don't
Right.
observe,
Hmm.
so if you start, and that could mean that if you look for problems, you just
Hmm.
might find them.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Exactly. Well, but that thing about things work within our observance. People will say, well, did you ever notice that celebrities die in threes? No, they don't. It's just that when you get to three, you stop counting and start over again. Well,
No, but,
three
but
celebrities died last month, and now three celebrities died this month. Well, that's six celebrities.
but there is something. Look, I'll say it this way, so it's not bombastic. There's times of lean and times of plenty.
Mm-hmm.
There's times when nothing's going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
From your preview,
Uh-huh.
nothing's going wrong. Everything is just functioning as it should, roughly.
Yeah. In my life, it is.
And then there's chunks where I'll give you an example. There's a video. This is a funny, dumb example, but whatever. There's a video from Spain, and it's
Mm-hmm.
taken vertically,
Mm-hmm.
and there's an older gentleman sitting at a picnic table,
Mm-hmm.
and they've prepared all the plates, and they're bringing the bottles and such, and the man's sitting there, and he reaches over for the wine, and his fingers nudge the bottle of wine. The bottle of wine slides and falls
Mm-hmm.
on the table, and he goes, oh, and when he goes, oh, to grab it, plates start falling, cascading on the other side, and there's a cameraman, and he looks up angry, and his phone is there, and he goes, and he throws the phone on the floor too after everything fell,
Mm-hmm.
and the cameraman says, well, why did you do that? And he said, they all wanted to fall, and I just wanted to complete the process. And it's like saying, okay, if everything's gonna go wrong,
Yeah.
let's floor it. Let's put the gas to the metal,
Hmm.
the pedal to the metal, and run this puppy, all the
Yeah.
way. Get it
Yeah.
over with. Get it over.
It's the what the hell thing.
It's
It
the pull the bandage off the scar
uh-huh.
thing. So
It's
he
the what
threw.
the hell thing. Yeah,
It's the
you're on a diet. You're on a diet and you're doing good. You've lost a lot of weight and everything, and somebody offers you a Snickers out of their bag of fun size Snickers, and you think, what the hell? I've been really good. I'm going to have one. So you have one, and then that sets up that start and that craving. And next thing you know, next morning you wake up with ding dong wrappers all over the place.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I've already screwed it up. What the hell? I might as well go knee deep.
Yeah. I mean, so sometimes there is times
Hmm.
where it's noticeable that a bunch of stuff is going all screwed up. Like my past 2 months. To be fair,
Hmm.
if you take all the context into it, my car's 20 years old.
Yeah.
I've not been the most judicious upkeeper, especially
Hmm.
within the last half decade,
Yeah.
of its needs.
Hmm.
So within reason,
Yeah.
am I not getting what I put into it?
Well, and it also depends upon your attitude and your perspective because, yes, a lot of bad crap has happened. But in the great grand scheme of things, a lot of good stuff has happened too. Your dog is there with you, he's healthy. You've got a roof over your head. You don't owe any money on it other than property taxes, and everybody has that. And this too shall pass. You're you're fed, you have utilities. A
That's
lot
right.
of good things have happened.
That's right. It's just that when you have a
it, it,
flow,
it it's your it's your perspective, and when stuff interrupts that flow,
yes.
it turns that perspective upside down, and you're like, well, what else? You got anything else? Come
Well,
on, let's get it over with.
that's the problem, Mark, that we have the flow, and once we get a kink in that hose, we're like, well, come on, man. I'll tell you
It's,
what, it's sort of this. Have you ever been, just like that Spanish dude in that video, have you ever reached over for a paper cup and for some reason grabbed it the way you never grab it millions of times
just drop it. Yeah.
and you drop it?
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
a plate for no reason you miscalculated without thinking, and now you have plate with food all over the place.
Yeah. It happens to all of us. Reach for something and accidentally hit the handle of my coffee cup and knock it over that way. And it's like, son of a. Now I got to jump up and try to find a towel. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Only on days that end with a Y.
No, but once you drop that coffee, now you look at it and you're like, there's a pool of coffee. You've got your cup on the floor. Now you have to go get something to clean it up. Now there's a whole it's interrupting my fun time.
And I don't have any coffee. I got to make more coffee.
Yes, and I've got to make more coffee. So it creates a little bubble moment in time where you're like, I'm going to use the word bitchin with the end at the end.
I with the apostrophe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Oh,
So
okay.
now,
Jim Dockrell says a new pickup will cost you 70,000 these days. Not this cowpoke. Now you know why I don't have a new pickup. Nope, I don't. Mm-mm. I've bought 2 new cars in my lifetime. One of them's in the driveway right now, and the other one we sold not long after we moved up here. So, I'm not going to buy me a new pickup so I can occasionally haul stuff to the dump and haul lumber in.
cars in the 90s were easier than cars today, and cars in the 80s were easier than cars in the 90s. And going back in time, it gets
Yep.
easier and easier.
Give me another 63 Chevy pickup like I used to have. I mean, I could fix anything on that with duct tape, baling wire, and a can of WD-40.
You want to know
So,
something? You want to see one example of what's the word for it? Oh, geez, mistreatment based on age and appearance.
just look at me.
Well, I was gonna look, mistreatment. Check this out, mistreatment. That's it. You should. Unfortunately,
Yeah, that'll be my display name next week, mint. Next week.
no. But it's like you see, if I didn't have the story to tell, that would have been the funny to end the story, this chapter. But I just have to say, like, it was so good. It was such a sweet. You know what it was? It was the right amount of sugar in the coffee with cremola or whatever. Okay, so here's bias against age and and appearance. I called before I did any of this to repair my car.
Mhm.
I called the official local Ford dealership
Mhm.
to judge pricing,
Yeah.
but I did not expect the insult to my vehicle, its age,
Oh yeah.
and it's because she said, "Sir, long time ago, we've stopped providing service for that vehicle, and you're gonna have to go to a local mechanic." And I like, well, wait a second, that's your child, lady.
Yeah, really.
No, seriously, I felt that way. I was like, number one, sure,
Mhm.
she's in my possession. That's your child, and you're gonna treat
Mhm.
her like that. I actually was slightly offended. Like I was,
Yeah.
huh, and I hung up. I was like a little bit like emboldened. And but it gets to a point where how long are they gonna provide service for something that's like from 1921? It's like,
Well, it's funny you say that because there is a video on YouTube of it's two guys, and they said we're going to take our Ford to the Ford dealer, and we're going to get an oil change. And they said, but the thing is, and they turn around and they show it, it was like a 1923 Model T. They said, we're going to see, will they work on it? And so they just drove it on up, went into the service department, said, hi, we got this old Ford out here. We want to get an oil change. The guy says, okay, sure. What do you got? And he told him what we have, 1923 Model T. 1923? Yes. You just want an oil change? Yes. Let me check with the service manager, and went back into the thing. But they eventually ended up doing it. So I guess it depends on, I mean, it's hard to mess up an oil change, you know. It's not like they were asking them to rebuild the engine. But
yeah.
I mean, I guess there are certain degrees that they will and won't do.
Well, yeah, but in this
So
scenario, it's like
mhm,
take it to a mechanic.
mhm. It's like, well, I thought I was. That's why I'm calling you.
I was like, I was really seriously. I was like, man, I knew they were gonna charge more
Hmm.
if they would have,
Hmm.
but I tried, and so that's kind of my what I wanted to think. But your answer before I told the story was the perfect one because it's really It's so funny. There
Well,
is
it's
bias against, I've noticed that too. That there's, but last thing I'll say, the other night I was walking my dog. This is my hometown, dude.
mm-hmm,
I know every corner of this place. Like, I've been here forever, dude.
mm-hmm,
And I'm walking my dog way at night, and there's a lady walking her dog.
mm-hmm,
And she gives me the stink eye of suspicion of who the hell are
mm-hmm.
you? And I became indignant. Now, by the way, I don't read minds,
Sure.
but I had an intuition. So I said, good evening. Like, and I lowered my head, like, like trying to,
Hey, good evening.
good evening. Like, I'm minding my business. Don't
Mm-hmm.
mind me. I'm not a. And she just stood there, dead eyed. I'm like, freaking, I was this close to saying, but she didn't give me dialogue, so I can't say it. But the point is, I was like, lady, I was thinking it, lady, I've lived, before you were probably born. I've been walking up and down this town,
Yep, you're an old man.
okay? Like you're standing in a place where I've probably stood
Mhm.
100 times before, just by sheer volume of me walking around with buddies. So don't get, you're the freaking weirdo. You get your butt out. Like in my mind, I was like thinking all these things. Um, but then I secondly said it in Spanish just in case, and she did a casual thing. But it's like,
Yeah. Well, I think it all depends on the context. For instance, let's say you got it. You need a plumber for whatever reason. Are you going to trust the 50-year-old plumber, or are you going to trust the 23-year-old plumber?
50.
Yeah, I'm with you. You know, I'm going to trust the 50-year-old mechanic before I trust the 19-year-old mechanic. Do you even know what a carburetor is? You know, have you
Yeah,
ever seen one? Your parents let you drive? You know, that kind of thing.
yeah.
So it depends on the context. But yeah,
But
I
it's getting,
mean,
but Mark, it's getting to the point,
mhm,
Mark, that the people you interact with that you used to receive service from and different things
mhm.
are looking younger and younger
Oh, yeah.
and less knowledgeable. And I think that that is not because of anything other than
Mhm.
that we shall not speak of, because as people are appearing younger, we're appearing something else. And
Yeah.
so from our vantage point, we've accumulated now, but we got to be careful, like we've talked about in the past. But it's kind of like that guy. What's the woodworker guy? Actor.
Oh, I can't think of his name.
Oberman or Fesserman.
Yeah, Nick. Oh heck, I can't remember.
Nick Oberman.
Yeah,
Okay,
something.
well that
No,
guy.
yeah, but I know who you're talking about.
Okay, so that guy in that video, which we talked about, this,
Hmm.
he's walking through Home Depot, and a young kid comes up and says,
I know more than you do.
"Yeah." Well, the young kid comes up and he says, "Well, sir, can I help you?" And he looks with just a
Offerman.
cold steel face, and he looks, Offerman. He turns and looks at the young man that just asked him, and he looks him dead bolt face, and he says,
Mm.
"I know more than you."
Yeah.
And it's like, and the little kid's like, and it's kind of true, dude.
Mm.
Like I walk into a Home Depot, I've been in there so many times across my life that I could probably get behind the register.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
so it's like, man,
I've been in that store a million times. I know that place better than half of the people that work there. Just let me go get my stuff and get out of there.
I know where they keep the toilet paper rolls behind the cabinets.
Dude, I know where they keep the little metal hook goodie to reach the stuff that you can't get to.
That's great.
You got something that's up there on the shelf and you can't reach it. I know where they keep the little hook to go grab it and get it myself and put the son of a gun back.
I've been known to grab the ladder that they anchor to the thing,
Oh,
release and drag it to where I need something, and climb it as if I were an official employee.
that's the fastest way around here to get service. If you need service, no matter what department you're in, and there's nobody there, that's the fastest way to get somebody is go grab that ladder. Don't unlock it. Don't release it. Grab that ladder and drag it about 2 feet. They will come from out of the woodwork to keep you off of it.
Hilarious.
Like, good. Now that I have your attention, I need this. You know, where's it at? Y'all hit it on me again.
So yeah, so nothing, dude. I think that we should land it because I really
Okay.
do would like to eat, because I really I have not eaten and I do feel
Okay. Do
famished
that.
a little bit.
All
Um,
right. So just remember out there, folks, that little old man you see walking around with the Vietnam vet hat was more of a badass than probably any of us will ever be. So
yeah.
show some respect.
Oh yeah. Um, we go live every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. It's the Trampled Underfoot podcast show, and we do that here on YouTube. We also have a Facebook page, and that's Facebook at facebook.com, Trampled Underfoot Podcast. So you might want to go check that out. And we have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. Check us out over there for past episodes. We're sponsored by,
Hardy Hill Media, the only man I'm ever going to recommend to get a website from. And that's just simply because he gives you performance. He doesn't give you excuses. Now, if you're even toying with the idea of getting a website, setting up maybe an e-commerce site, set up a web store where you got offers. You got offers? Okay. Maybe you have offers, but you'd like to offer your products or service to the public at large. There's no better way to do it than to get over there to harneilmedia.com. There's a link to Harneil Media in every video you'll find on this channel. It's that way for a reason. Get over to harneilmedia.com, hit that contact us link, and have a chat with Steve. You'll find he's very, very reasonable priced, and you're going to get 100% personal service. That's harneilmedia.com, HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of Trampled Underfoot podcast.com.
All right. Well, guys, thank you for coming out and hanging with us tonight. Um, Nothing. Enjoy the rest of your week and do the things that you like and have fun with and that please you. Do it safely, whatever that might be. And we will be back next week, Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time. So till then, peace out.
Please.